Hello, and welcome to Fresh Blood, a podcast about killing it after 40, where we prove that new blood does not necessarily equal young blood. Here to discuss what it takes to have continued success through life, I'll be your host, Jolie Downs. With over 20 years of executive recruiting experience, I've learned how much we can grow and be inspired by other people's stories. I'm excited to share that with you here on Fresh Blood. Today we are speaking with Scott Hutchings. Scott is solving problems one coin at a time. He is the president and founder of Global Coin Solutions, where they turn mixed currency into funds that help charities. Since beginning the company in 2015, they have processed over 13 million of mixed currencies without any cost to their clients, while simultaneously helping the environment and being a large employer of people with disabilities. Fantastic. Before starting Global Coin Solutions, Scott held various sales and marketing roles and was also the president of the Saab Club of Canada for over a decade. I am looking forward to learning more about your story, Scott. Please, could you tell us a bit about your path to starting your company, Global Coin Solutions?
I have to tell you that first off, I never had any ambition of running my own company.
That's interesting.
I was a loyal, hardworking employee. I gave everything that I had to the companies that I worked for. I guess I'm an anomaly, or I was an anomaly, in that I wanted to work for a place for a long time. One of the things that I did, and certainly one of my employers, was they push it themselves, but I learn as much as I can about a company. And so my second long-term role was within IBM Canada, which then eventually became Lenovo, as we were part of the PC division. And their objectives were every 18 to 24 months, their people change jobs. And I think
in the company or
within the company.
Within the company.
Yeah, absolutely. And a corporation the size of IBM, you can find new jobs within the same company, never leave the company.
It's really smart.
Absolutely, because it prevents people from getting bored. It prevents them from looking outside. And at the end of the day, the more you know about the company, the more valuable you are.
Yeah, and they're giving that opportunity for that continued growth. So you're just constantly expanding your own self, which is great.
Absolutely. And I had a long career there. I was there for over 13 years. And of course, after any major acquisition like they went through, there were changes. Within the first 12 months, there was a lot of manpower changes. And I was actually one of the people that was tapped to be packaged out. I wasn't ready to leave.
Yeah. That's rough. Isn't that rough?
It was. And then I found an internal posting and applied for it and spent another 3 years working in another department that I'd never worked in before.
Oh, great. So you end up being able to stay for a little longer.
Yeah. And so that it worked out from two perspectives, because it allowed me to get the experience that I didn't have. I'd never worked in finance before. So I did that and got to stay, which it was perfect because, as I said, I wasn't ready to go. And then the next round of cuts that came along, which actually they chopped more than 50% of the Canadian workforce.
Wow.
At that point, I was not only ready to go, I had something lined up that I wanted to do.
That's great. Were you planning ahead?
Little. It was a little of both. I was planning ahead in that a friend of mine had opened his own business, and you mentioned the Saab Club of Canada. So at the time, I was the president of the club. In total, I've owned 8 different Saabs, and he was a Saab master mechanic. He's from Sweden, and he opened a specialty shop, and I wanted to work for him. I wanted to work with him. This was something that I was passionate about. It was a hobby, but of course, I'd never been a mechanic or really had anything to do with cars, but I wanted in. And so when they came to me and tapped me on the shoulder, I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll take your package because I'm ready to go.
I'm a mechanic?
No, what I did end up doing is managing the parts department for them.
Oh, cool.
which that's logistics and warehousing, things I'd already done. And I was essentially his number two. When he wasn't there, I was in charge. And I did that for a few years. Unfortunately, whether I like it or not, that sort of business doesn't, unless you're the owner and the shop is doing tremendously well, the employees don't make a whole lot of money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I found myself looking for a change at that point in time and spent a couple of years between a couple of different positions. Nothing that really grabbed my attention, really did it for me. After, and ironically, and it comes full circle to where I am now, but ironically, when I left the garage, I went to work for a company whose objective, at least the role that I had, the objective was to move your wallet to your phone.
Oh,
so take all of your payment methods and put them on your phone. And we do this today, right? We use Apple Pay and Google Pay, and we do all of that kind of stuff right now. But it's the irony, of course, is that now I'm essentially in a 100% cash business. I was trying to put myself out of work before I knew it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, as it turns out, the role, while it was great, it was exciting, it was very different. And I really would have loved to have gotten into it. Sadly, the person that I worked for was part of what she needed to do in hiring me was to transition clients from her to me so that she was freed up. And she ultimately didn't have the time to do that. So I never really got to do what I was hired to do, and it didn't work.
Yeah, that happens.
It does, and life goes on.
Yeah.
And so it did, and I found myself at another small business. It was really not something that I was interested in, but I was there for a while. And then I started looking, and I never would have put any credence into using LinkedIn to find it. I'm sure I've been like a lot of people out there and applied to a lot of different things and never got a sniff from LinkedIn until this one. And I applied to this job, and I really didn't understand what the company did, but based on the job description, I'm like, I can do that. And so I applied, and I was contacted pretty quickly and went through the interview process. And the guy that interviewed me came over from England because that's where they were headquartered. And we got along tremendously. And ultimately, the interview went so well, the second interview was already booked before I left.
That's great.
I got hired, and I ran their North American operations, and their business was similar to what I'm doing now.
Okay. So this is where you learned the business.
This is when I learned of this.
Mm-hmm. So you fell into the industry, basically.
Literally. Yeah. Every person that I've talked to since, the response is always, I never heard of that. It sounds incredible. It's a great idea, but I've never heard of this. And needless to say, when going through the interview process and all the things that he was describing, I'm like, this is incredible. Instead of selling things or marketing things, I get to help charities do the stuff they do.
Feels so much better.
Without any question at all. So I got hired. I went over on day number 6. I hopped on a plane and went over to England for 18 days. Never been over there before. It was fantastic.
Yeah, so that's fun too.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun. It was very educational. Met a lot of people and learned a lot of things. Came back and then just hit the ground running. Sad I did. It was just, again, so different from anything that I'd ever done. And being so different, there's no template out there on how to do it. I can't look at a book. I can't Google it. And all you're going to find now is anything that I'm connected with.
That's exciting. You get to create it.
I do. So things went on. We were doing well. At least I believe we were. And at least from the perspective of dealing with charities and the charitable stuff, the company was fine, but they had other business lines that they were involved in and other operations around the world. And ultimately, they closed their doors. I was on a call, or I was sent an email to get on a call with the owner and CEO I think it was the end of November. And I got on the call, and it was the owner and his son. And they explained very little, and they said, we need you to come over. So got a plane ticket, flew over, and found out everything that was going on and what was happening. And the business was closed down.
Oh, it's so rough. So you find yourself in that moment once again.
Yeah. And this time it was very short notice. This time, unlike anything before, I had people that were relying on me for their jobs. And of course, I had clients, charity clients, who were relying on the service that was being provided to allow them to bring money in this way. And I was left trying to figure out what my next move was going to be.
How did you deal with that?
To be quite frank, there wasn't a lot of time to really deal with it. The irony of the situation is we had a trip booked with friends of ours, and all this stuff was going on in early December, and then the trip comes up, which was later in December, and we're like, okay, there's nothing I can do to change things, so I'm going to go on vacation.
Go enjoy this trip. Yeah.
And so we did, and my friend kept asking, could we do this? Could you start a business, and could it work? And as I said, I had never had the ambition of starting a business. I may have had the entrepreneurial spirit in terms of coming up with new ways of doing things and running things, but to start a business and own a business, it really just was never on my radar. So he kept poking at me and asking about this. And while we were down there, we were in Mexico, we were in Ixtapa, I actually had calls with a different organization, and they were also in England, which, for anybody who doesn't know, and it's something that I've learned over time, England is the center of the currency exchange. So it's not a surprise that I was talking to another organization there, and they were their perception, their offer was, are you interested in continuing on? We don't know what that looks like, whether it would be a division of our company, or if you'd just simply be a contractor to us, or if you'd be a completely independent operator and we just work together. But it opened up a lot of ideas. And ultimately, I came back from Mexico and planted to start a business. So now it became figuring things out. And keep in mind, we were still being paid at that point in time, because the company went into administration in the UK, and the administrators were winding the business down.
That's going to give you a little wiggle room then to do this.
Well, a little, and I didn't realize how little until. So I was trying to stretch things out as long as I possibly could, so that my people ended up with paychecks for as long as possible, and so that I did. And so but the administrators kept pushing and pushing. Do you want to buy the assets of the company? And so what ended up happening is I ended up forming a partnership. So Global Coin Solutions, I own half of it, and I've got 4 partners that own the other half. And the second, I'm not joking, the second that I made an offer, they said, okay, great, you're done.
So they accepted it.
They accepted, and GCS was born.
Wow. And what was this time like for you? Because this is a lot is happening when you're going through that process. Were you feeling confident? Were you concerned? How was your thought process during this all?
I was both confident and concerned.
That's about right, actually.
I certainly couldn't have taken that step and started a company and gone to the customers that I had and said, hey, I'm doing this and I can support your business, support your fundraising efforts, if I didn't think I could do it. Of course, I had to rebuild everything because we had a complete network in the other company. Mm-hmm. So I needed to establish different partnerships. I needed to have outlets to be able to move the foreign currency to. So there was a lot of things that had to be created, which I didn't have that experience. So that was very new. And there's no question, it was a trying time because starting a company and really didn't have a lot of knowledge on how to do that, because there's the business of running a company and then setting one up.
Yeah.
They're not the same thing.
No, they're not. Agree. What do you think is the most important thing you learned through that process?
The part of the reason that I partnered with the people that I partnered with is because they had experience in starting businesses and essentially in running businesses. And so they had knowledge that I didn't have. So certainly finding either a mentor or a partner that you can work with that can offset things, the areas where you're not strong in, that is definitely, and that ultimately, that's one of the reasons why I did what I did with partners, because they had, whether it was them directly or indirectly with their employees, they knew how to do different things that I just had no clue about. And so it was easy for me to let the company setup, as an example, be handled by somebody else, because at the end of the day, I could offer nothing in that space.
Yeah, but it's smart to have that complementing.
And what it allowed me to do was just focus on running the company, getting it off the ground, making sure that the customers that I was dealing with were going to continue with me, which they did, which was a big trust factor. It's very humbling to have people and companies stand behind you and say, we trusted you before. We trust you doing this on your own. It
says a lot.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, most of the people that I deal with, I don't usually meet until later on in our relationship. So I'm not even meeting these people face to face, and we're working out ways to work together. And then at the end, we're sitting down and they're agreeing to let me handle however much money might be coming through here. Mm-hmm. And we've never seen each other. And to be able to have
an impact, Scott.
Sorry?
You must be making an impact, because that says a lot.
I think it speaks to what I've built here.
Yes.
And like I said, it is extremely humbling when other folks will stand up and say, yeah, he's the guy, you can trust him. No, we realize you don't have a clue of how much money you're talking about here, but you can trust that he's going to do the right thing and do what he says he's going to do. And at the end of the day, you mentioned $13 million. We were, before COVID, we were up to, I think it was about 2.75 million a year that we were handling.
Right. For charities. That's amazing. So now I'm curious, what would you say has been your greatest success to date, personally and professionally? Give me one of each.
From a professional perspective, I will tell you that my largest client recommended that my client transfer over. They're partnered with American Airlines. So Great. American Airlines, they have a program called Champions for Children, who collect for the UNICEF Change for Good program. Mm. And they do a tremendous job. It's awe-inspiring. The organization that they worked with, and they said in this case, they felt that UNICEF would be better served working directly with me. So they encouraged UNICEF to consider that change. UNICEF did. And we went through many weeks of working out, negotiating. They gave me a 1-year contract and then renewed it for 5 years, which they had never given the other company a 5-year contract.
Oh, that's great.
And the other company is way bigger than I am. and is a household name, and I got a 5-year contract.
See, and this is big because a lot of listeners are going to be people who have their own small businesses. What do you think you did that helped stand you apart from that company and get that 5-year?
The main difference between myself and any other organization who deals with foreign currency for charities, and we are the only ones in North America. Every other organization, first and foremost, has a day job, if you will.
Mm.
They are currency exchanges. That is what they do. That's their core. That is their business. They work with charities and support their foreign currency fundraising efforts because it's the right thing to do, because they're in the space. Whereas GCS, our core is helping charities with foreign currency, period. We're not a currency exchange.
Mm-hmm. That's perfect.
So the difference is that when it comes to working with UNICEF, I'm all over working with them as opposed to simply supporting what they're doing.
Got it.
If I can offer suggestions on how to do things a little bit differently, how to tweak things, because this is my business, the little things that they're asking for, that's just part of what I do, what I give. It's not like it's a big ask. And it did not hurt. It did not hurt that there's not a 5-hour time difference.
Yeah,
So,
that helps. That helps for sure. What about your greatest personal?
That's tougher. Getting hired at IBM. So one of the things about me is I completed high school and way back when we had grade 13. And that's as far as I went. I didn't take post-secondary. I didn't go to college or university. Instead, I got married a month before I turned 20 and was married for 20 years. I'm no longer married, but
That was young. That was very young.
It was, but it was also a long marriage. It wasn't instant by any stretch. But back then, IBM didn't hire you if you didn't have a university degree. They did have a program where occasionally they would hire you under what they called a professional hire. IBM had actually owned retail stores in Canada, and I got hired in there. And I'm not joking when I say I was hired as the assistant manager of the IBM warehouse outlet, and I'd never sold anything in my life. It's where the personal pride comes in is that I started working there on October 2nd, 1995. The first 2 weeks, none of my sales were recorded. So I essentially lost the first 2 weeks of the quarter.
Ooh, that's no good.
In the warehouse outlet. And I ended up number 2 in total revenue in the entire chain.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. What did you do to get there? How did you manage that?
So the number 1 salesperson, his favorite phrase was everything was the greatest thing since sliced bread. Didn't matter what it was. I was the opposite. I would ask people I was more a consultant than I was a salesperson. Mm-hmm. And I had no issue walking people to the door if after talking to them, we determined that they didn't in fact need a computer. They may have wanted a new one, but they didn't need one.
That's good.
I never sold anything that people didn't want or need. And I was straightforward with people.
I like how simple you put it. You ask them what they need. You asked them.
Well,
sometimes we forget it's this very simple solutions that can make the biggest difference.
And I wouldn't be afraid as well. I had many situations where people would come in and say, oh, I was told I needed this. Okay, so once you figure out what it is they're doing, maybe they don't need that. And again, no joke aside here, they didn't need that $5,000 computer, which was the average going rate at the time. Maybe they only needed a $3,500 computer. And I would tell them, and I would explain the differences. And I wouldn't explain it in such a way that they couldn't understand. Didn't matter who they were, if they understood computers or they didn't. It made no difference. I would never, I don't talk down to people.
Honesty is
Um,
refreshing to everybody, if you ask me.
so that's what I did. And that stands out to me. It was something I did. Nobody
Yeah.
else did it.
Let me ask you this. There's a lot of things in life that there's lots of ups and downs. We all have our ups and downs, and that's just natural in life. But what do you think is most important to have so that you have continued success through life that keeps you getting through the down times and dominating in the up times?
For me, I look at what I'm doing here with GCS, and I'll tell anybody who asks, this is the last job I'm going to have. I will not fold. I don't care what COVID throws at me. I don't care what lockdowns happen. It will not change my determination to keep this going.
That's made me smile so much. I love that. It's great.
I just, again, the transition from selling and marketing things, there's no question. When I was in the garage and we would be able to fix somebody's car that they loved, by the way, and Saab people, they're a very special breed. And I could say that because I was one. Being able to help them keep their cars alive, that it did give a lot of pleasure, right? Because you're helping somebody. If it was just a regular garage and we were just fixing whatever somebody shows up in, which, by the way, in most cases, people just treat them as appliances, it's very different. But the people that came to a Saab specialty shop knew what they were driving and they appreciated it. And so it's a very different feel. But to be able to help charities, especially now, to be able to help raise money for whatever the causes might be, whether it's emergency relief for children around the world through UNICEF, or it's the Air Canada Foundation supporting breakfast clubs for kids or children's hospitals across the country, or it's March of Dimes Canada who are raising money to help anyone in Canada with a disability, just helping people. It's very different from selling widgets.
Yeah. It feels different, doesn't it?
It
Yeah.
does. And when I started the company, the intention was to help as many charities as possible and to put people to work. What we do is very manual. There is no machine out there that will separate 40 different currencies, whether it's in banknotes or it's in coin, from each other. Never mind getting into all of the different denominations that exist.
Mm-hmm.
Never mind getting into the withdrawn currency within a currency. It takes people. And so the more charities that I can work with, the more money that is raised to do good things,
Mm-hmm.
the more people I employ.
It's beautiful. Worthy, beautiful mission. I love that you found this mission too in life. It sounds like because I love that how you said that this is it for you. You're not going to fold. You're going to move forward and make this work. And that's the mindset that it takes to have success. That's it right there. It's this is it for me and I'm not going to back down. It sounds like you found your why, you found your mission, you found your passion and you're solid in that knowing. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And it sounds like is the industry itself was something that you stumbled into. And so I'm curious, let's say if someone is because you were at a point in your life that was an open book, essentially you were looking for that next move, you didn't know what was right and you found this. So I'm curious from your own experience if you have any advice that you would give someone who might be in that position right now. Lots of people, because of COVID, have been out of work and they're either trying to figure out how to get back into their industry or they're trying to figure out what they're going to do next. Is there anything from your own experiences that you've learned that you could share that might help the listeners going through something like
The first thing that comes to mind is a willingness to explore opportunities. So my very first job, again, I started working there 6 weeks before I got married. So I was 19 and I gave everything that I had to the company. And I literally had blinders on until I got to a point where I realized that I will never go anywhere here. And the sad thing was part of that rationale came as I had doors closed to me when all I literally was trying to do was make things better. If I saw something that could be done differently, or maybe it should be done in a slightly different way, or just simply asking questions to understand things better. And that was taken as a threat, actually. The person who put the roadblocks up for me ultimately was afraid that I was after his job.
That
And
happens.
it does,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And it took that for me to open my eyes and realize that there's more things out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so from that time onwards, I said, I'm open to every opportunity. And even today, I'm not changing jobs. GCS is not going anywhere. But if somebody wants to have a discussion about how I might be able to help them, there's a guy out there that I'm pretty enthralled with, I'll put it that way. The ultimate entrepreneur, Sir Richard Branson.
Oh, love him.
His response is, the answer is yes.
Yes.
Bring me the challenge and I'll figure out how to make it work. But the answer is yes.
The answer is yes. This is key to success. And I love it. And like you said, keeping yourself open to new opportunities. And just like Richard Branson says, say yes and then figure it out from there. And I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who have adopted this philosophy and it's led to multitudes of success for them.
Absolutely. As the pandemic was hitting here, I was contacted by a company in Japan. And I've been involved with shipments that have come in from Australia and from Germany and from England. And we're doing transborder stuff to the US all the time. But I'd never done anything with Japan. And it was a massive amount of, and I am saying this correctly, it was a massive amount of US coin.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in Canada, he's in Japan, and he's asking me to deal with his US coin. So if coin was easy to move around the world, there'd be a whole bunch of people in the US that would be able to help him. So he comes to a guy in Canada, and I had never dealt with that sort of volume before, but I'm like, yeah, we'll figure it out. At the end of the day, it just comes down to, if somebody comes at you and wants to have a conversation, yes, let's sit down and have that conversation. Mm-hmm. We may walk away and never see each other again, but on the other hand, it could start something amazing.
Yeah, you just never know.
No.
Yeah. Now, have you adopted any specific habits over the years that you feel have contributed to your own?
The only habit that I've adopted is the habit of not adopting any habits.
I love that.
And sadly, again, you talk about somebody like Richard Branson, his very first thing is he'll tell you, he carries a book around with him and he writes everything down.
Yeah.
And I need to adopt that habit because my memory is not what it used to be.
I would say that I agree with this. And this is something that I fought personally, writing things down. I've always been told to write things down all my life. I've been told to write things down and I'm fine. I'm just in my head. I don't have to write it down. I feel it. I know it. But I've adopted this practice over the past couple of years of writing things down. And it is a very powerful practice. It does make a huge difference.
Yeah. So no, I don't have any habits that I could share.
Let me ask you this. Is there a piece of advice that you would share with listeners that you feel if someone were to make one little change, it might help them get closer to their own success, regardless of what that?
Be prepared.
Ooh, good one.
And I say that because right from my start of my working life, I've always come into a day usually early. I like to have the time to deal with stuff if it comes up. Now, in this business, my business, it's very different than when I worked for people and there were set things going on and there was other people's schedules and that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, it's just being prepared for whatever may come at you. I saw something on LinkedIn yesterday and I commented on it and I questioned it. And the person who posted it responded last night and said, you need to talk to this guy because we can figure out. And I was just simply questioning whether or not this was something I could be part of. And he suggested talking to this person. So first thing this morning, I reach out and I connect with this person on LinkedIn, and we exchange messages, and we set up a call for 12 today. And we've now got a discussion going on.
Mm-hmm.
But yesterday, I reached out believing that there was no possibility of working with these folks. And after the conversation, it's a complete 180 now. We're exploring things.
That's great.
Don't ever, and I hate to use this cliche, but don't ever judge a book by its cover. Don't have a predetermination before you've done the work to find out whether or not something will work.
That's good. Yeah. We do make these snap judgments, don't we?
Yeah. And like I said, with this one, I did, but I wasn't closed to talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Not at all.
And staying open. Yeah, I love that. So, well, before we wrap up, I'd like to ask you, because you did have a number of times that you mentioned in your own life where you were at a crossroads and had to figure out that next step, if you will. And I'm sure you've had other times in your life that have been a struggle. I'm just curious, what motivates you or pushes you through those difficult times is what I'm wondering.
And I can't tell you where this comes from, but I'm not a religious person. I don't have a faith background, but I have this undying belief that whatever it is going to work out. There was one point, yes, this company shut down, and yes, it caused me to start GCS. The transition there was a couple of weeks. There was a period where I was unemployed for 3 months, and I'd never been unemployed. I'd been working, like I said, since I was 19, working full time. But I just believe, and it doesn't matter whether it's this or it's personal stuff or it's financial stuff or it's whatever it might be. But recently, and I guess it was either late January I guess it was late January. So I was renting a place. Mm-hmm. And the person that I dealt with in between me and the owner of the property came to me and she said, he's considering selling. He wants to put it on the market and test the market. Like, okay, so I'm not going to wait around and see if you find a buyer who wants to continue renting. I'm going to go find another place. Mm-hmm. And I did. I just went and found another place. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yes, it was stressful. There's no question about it. I'm not suggesting that it wasn't, just as I'm not suggesting this whole COVID situation is not stressful. Oh, it is stressful beyond anything that we ever comprehended. You look at a year ago, and were we not looking at people in Italy talking about closing things down and looking at them saying, what are you talking about?
Yeah. It's unreal, really, to think about it.
And now we've lived through it, and we're where I am in the Toronto and Mississauga area. Things are starting to open up, which is a complete opposite to where we were 3 weeks ago.
I think your answer was perfect, though. And it's that knowing inside of knowing that it's good. There are hard times. There are good. It's a cycle of life, and it is going to be okay. You're going to be okay. You're going to get through this too. Yeah. And I think that's it's really powerful when you're able to embody that. It's almost like a comfortableness within your own self, if you will, that gives you that knowing that everything is going to be okay. Again, doesn't mean that you're not struggling through whatever it is you're struggling, but you will get to the other side and you will be okay. I love that.
Yeah. And it might take a little bit of work.
Yeah, definitely will take work, most likely.
But it's just work. It's just it's effort. It's what we have to do every day.
Yeah, everything in life worth having is effort.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining me, Scott. Before we go, is there anything that you want to add or let the listeners know before we sign off?
Yeah, if you're involved in a charity, and I can't think of any charity out there that doesn't need additional fundraising. If you are involved in a charity, reach out. This is easy to do. And if you're involved in a business, we've been involved with businesses helping charities, and the effort, the program drives traffic to the businesses. So it's a cycle. It's a win. Everybody wins.
That's great.
If we can help, we will.
And let's have your information. We'll have your information in the show notes. So if anyone's interested, they can look in the show notes for your website and anything else that might be relevant. Let me know, and we'll include the links in that as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time, Scott. I appreciate you sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me on, and you've been fantastic. Thank you.
There were a lot of great takeaways from Scott's story. Scott had his ideal corporate role working for IBM. His plan was to stay with one company for a very long time. Unfortunately, life intervened, as it does from time to time, and Scott's company experienced severe layoffs of 50%, resulting in Scott looking for new work. He then took a role that revolved around his personal passion, and he found a satisfaction in selling services that made a personal difference to someone. He enjoyed his work with the Saab company, but while it was a passion role, it did not fill his needs financially. He went looking for that right next role, spending the next few years in different positions that in the end were not right for him. And this happens. Sometimes we take a role with certain expectations, and those expectations are not met. Sometimes we take a role and find that it is simply not the right fit for us. And that's okay. It's okay to make a change when you're unhappy in a position. What's not okay is to spend countless years of your life spending time doing something that makes you deeply unhappy. During this time, Scott used LinkedIn to help him find a new role. LinkedIn is an excellent resource to help in finding new opportunities. If you are not on LinkedIn, consider this a must for your professional career. It is amazing the level of opportunity available on this platform. I can tell you there are countless recruiters combing through LinkedIn, looking for prospects for their clients' opportunities. There are countless corporations promoting their roles on LinkedIn, countless connections and opportunities that are being created because of comments on people's posts. Like Scott shared, he gained that new connection to a dream company via LinkedIn. New business development is happening every day on this platform. It does not matter your profession. If I am coming into contact with anybody, I will look them up on LinkedIn, and I am only one of millions who do this. Having a full profile on LinkedIn is a simple yet extremely effective way to open up new doors. Even if you never plan on making a change, even if you are in your forever job, get yourself on LinkedIn. I would suggest spending time polishing a strong profile. You want a good, clear picture, a nice summary of your experience and or goals, a full rundown of your background and positions. Treat it like a resume. This is your chance to put your best professional self forward. And again, I don't care what your profession is, being on LinkedIn will only be a benefit. Get yourself on the platform and start making those connections. This new role that Scott found was in a new industry, fundraising for charities, and it satisfied that itch that he was looking for to help service people in need of some way. It challenged him to learn new skills and opened up the financial opportunity. Scott had found the place he wanted to be when once again he was told the company was closing their doors. He was going to have to let go of all of his staff, people with disabilities who relied on this income. He was going to let down the charities who benefited from this additional fundraising to meet their goals. And he was once again going to have to find himself a new direction. He had a friend who kept asking Scott, well, could we do this? Could we make this work? Is this something that we could make happen? Scott had no desire to start a business. He had no desire to own a business. He never saw himself as an entrepreneur. But his friend planted that seed, and that seed grew. Scott kept thinking about it, and he realized could be the one who could turn this around. He went out, he found partners that helped fill in his own gaps, and he bought the portion of the business creating global coin solutions. He saved his employees' jobs. He continued the stream of financial help to his charities, and he continues to grow this business of helping. Scott has proclaimed this will be his last job. He will not fold, regardless of what COVID or the future throws. He has found his path, and he's going to keep making this work. There are 3 important things to note here. The first being that Scott did not consider himself an entrepreneur. He never had a desire to be one, nor thought of himself in that way. We humans tend to do this a lot. We underestimate ourselves. We count ourselves out early. We tell ourselves that it's not us. But you are all sorts of things that you don't even know yet. Every day is an opportunity for new growth, new enlightenment, new learning, and expansion. You never know what you are capable of until you try. Do you ever count yourself out? Do you ever count yourself out early? I know I have. And I will be doing my best not to do that again in the future. Let's all try to notice the next time that is happening, when we start to count ourselves out early. And consciously, let's make the decision to count yourself in. Let us all stop locking the doors before we've even tried to open them. The second thing to note is that seed that Scott's friend planted about, could we do this? Could we make this happen? This is so important. To be paying attention to the seeds that we plant in others. It is a huge impact. It has a huge impact on the lives around us. As a rule of thumb, if you do not have something positive or helpful to share with someone, I would suggest keeping it to yourself and moving on with your life. There is enough hard in life as it is. Let us all do our best not to be someone who contributes to it by planting negative seeds in others' lives. On the flip side, please do share every positive seed that you can. Please scatter those positive seeds throughout the day as if you are looking to plant a garden. Appreciation from other people can change the way someone sees themselves, and you never know the impact that can have on someone. Scott's friend's comments impacted not only Scott, but his employees, the charities, and the people who benefit from the charities. The ripples of our impact are vast and mostly unknown. And sometimes in life, all that is needed is someone to hold up the right mirror. Be that person that holds up the right mirror. The third was Scott's proclamation that this is his last job. He will not fold. He has made the decision to make this work, and I believe him. This is a huge key to success. The decision. Making the decision that you will make this work, that you will find a way. Because when you are resolute in that decision, you will make it work. You will find a way. Every situation you are involved in will have its ups and its downs. It is inevitable. If you have not made that internal decision that this is it, this is what I want, I will do whatever is needed to make this work. If you have not made that decision, it is so much easier to get off the ride during the downs. But the only way to make it to those soaring highs is to hold on during the lowest lows. So if you have found something that you really want, make the decision and hold on. Scott shared another big key to success in our talk. The answer is yes. As Richard Branson says, if someone offers you an amazing opportunity and you are not sure you can do it, say yes. Then learn how to do it later. And I have heard this time and time again from people who have found their success. They say yes. They make the leap and they figure it all out in the doing. After all, you are getting paid to learn. It is the ultimate win-win. When you say yes, you do more, you create more, you live more. We often say no due to fear. So the next time that fear is making you want to say no, I request that you say yes and then ask yourself, what is the best that could happen? And continue to ask that. What is the best that could happen? Finally, I loved that when I asked Scott how he pushed through his hard times, he shared that he has always had this belief that whatever he's going through, he will work it out. He'll figure it out. He'll get through and he'll be okay. Yes, things can get stressful. Yes, they can get painful, but he knows that this is the cycle of life and that overall, he's going to be okay. He'll get through this too. He has found that comfortableness of self, that knowing that whatever struggle that comes his way, he'll learn, he'll get through. And it is a sense of peace that can never be taken away. So this is my wish for us all, that we can find the peace within ourselves to know that whatever struggle that comes our way, we will figure it out. We will find our way. And in the end, we will be okay. Until next time. Thank you for joining us on Fresh Blood. Please subscribe and follow us on all streaming services, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Player FM. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Fresh Blood Podcast. I would love your help in spreading these stories and important messages. Please give us a like and share with a friend. Your help is greatly appreciated. I hope you make today a most fulfilling day.